So this webinar is looking at the year-round catechumenate, how and why. And we're going to look at the why first, and then we'll look at the how and some quick logistics. Please know that this is a shortened version of what I usually go through in the specialization course. So if you took the specialization course and you took this class already, you'll hear some repeat, but there's also some added, there are also some little examples and things that I'll use. So it's just kind of a shortened version. So the webinar itself will probably be about 35 to 40 minutes, and then afterwards will be time for questions. If you are watching this after, you're not watching it live, and you do have questions, feel free to email me at rhernandez@dioceseoffresno.org. rhernandez@dioceseoffresno.org. The one thing I'm going to ask that you keep in mind is the one thing that I most hear people not complain, but say, yeah, no, this isn't going to work. I hear that a lot. As soon as you hear that the catechumenate is year-round and see how it works, a lot of people immediately say, either no one will stay that long, or I don't have enough people on my team to do this. And those responses or suggestions for that will be coming in this webinar, how you can do this, why we should do it, and then how you can do it logistically. Again, these are just ideas. Every parish is going to be different. And so please do note that what works for you may not work for everybody. And so, I'll just be giving you some examples that you can go through. And sorry, I went through too fast. I'll give you some examples of what you can do and see what works for you. Also, please be aware, and I'll say it a couple of times within the webinar, excuse me. I need a quick drink. Be aware that in no way, shape, or form am I saying that tomorrow you need to go change your whole program and do this, okay? We're gonna talk about first steps. We're gonna talk about doing this gradually, not shutting it all down and starting all over again. So please don't think that as I present this and I show it to you that I'm saying this is what you have to do. We'll talk about first steps toward the end. All right, so let's see what is entailed for us. And the first thing to note is that this is a new paradigm. This is a new way of looking at it from 1988 or 89, when this process first came out. The first thing we had to do as an American church, I don't know if this is how it is in the rest of the world, but I know it's all over the US. First thing we did was put it in a calendar and put it in a school year model, starting in August, ending in June. And for a long time, that worked. I mean, people have been doing it for many, many years. But in reality, when you look at the order itself, the only times it speaks of specific dates or times of year is with Lent and Easter seasons. That's the only time. It never says you have to start in August. In fact, the new national statutes, which we'll look at, say something very different. And so we were the ones here who we start in August so that they get to Easter, and then Pentecost. And so they do it in a school year. But that's really not the method we look at. In fact, all over the right, and we're going to see a couple of examples, it talks about this initiation process depending on discernment and spiritual growth, as well as catechesis. So it's not just getting the right topics and putting them in where they fit, but it has to be a process of discernment and growth. And if we're not honoring that, then we're really not honoring the rite itself. If we're trying to rush it through in a year and we're not able to get everything in that time, then we have to ask ourselves, what is the proper thing to do? And so what the rite actually calls for is an initiation process that reflects the liturgical calendar of the church. And that can mean a lot of different things, but what I see it as meaning primarily is, one, that we're moving with the seasons, and two, that we are using that liturgical calendar, the Sunday Gospels, that guide us, not a pre-made curriculum. So it's something a little bit different. Also, the initiation process is the responsibility of the community, not of the team, not of the pastor. If you read the rite and it talks about the roles in initiation in the introduction, the first role it explores is the community. And so we need to be aware of that. And by pre-making a schedule that only includes us and the catechumens, we have effectively cut out the community. We're not allowing them to take their role with us in this process. And so it's really important to look at that. And again, we'll look at a couple of ways to do that. And then finally, that this is a process, not a program, and it is a journey. I love this picture that's on your screen right now because I love the way the road just completely goes and turns and goes up and down, and you can't see the end because that's how our catechetical journey, our spiritual journey should be. I can see a part of it from now to my near future, but I don't know what's going to happen after that down the line. And we should never stop learning. And so I love this road. It kind of reminds me of the road to Bishop, where there's just a lot of nothing on the side, and we're just going and following where the road is going to take us. It's a journey, and we are meant to accompany the catechumens on this journey, not guide them, not lead them, but accompany them. And we'll see how this works. So what is a year-round catechumenate? What does that actually mean? Well, a year-round catechumenate is exactly that, where the catechumenate phase is ongoing throughout the year without a pause unless there is no one ready at that moment. So let's say you just did a rite of election and everybody that was in the catechumenate was ready to move forward. So you might have a couple of months where you don't have catechumenate sessions because there's no one left in the catechumenate. But otherwise, you have catechumenate going and prepared to go all through the year. Why? Because instead of taking one group together through all the stages, this allows people to move in and out of the catechumenate based on their readiness. Instead of, okay, we're going to do this many weeks of catechumenate, and then everyone needs to be ready for rite of election, or we drop you till next year. Instead, we do discernment with each of them and ask, are you ready to move forward? Here's what the expectations are. Here's what's going to happen. Are you ready to move forward? And if they are, wonderful. And if they're not, then they stay in the catechumenate, which continues. It continues on. And then the group that's ready for purification enlightenment moves to another room or another day, and they meet separately because they have different concentrations and different rites, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this way, anyone can come in or out of the catechumenate when they're ready, instead of having to wait until the next rite. This allows for the rite of entrance into the catechumenate to be celebrated more than once a year. So it's going to happen whenever you have 3 or 4 that are ready to move into the catechumenate, you do a rite of entrance. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to do one for every single one of them, but you're going to wait till you have 3 or 4 or however many, depending on how large your group is. When you have a little group ready to move in, then they move in. And the ones that aren't ready yet, that just started last week, they stay in inquiry or pre-catechumenate until they're ready. So again, it's all based on readiness, not on the calendar. We need to throw the calendar away. It also allows for those who are not quite ready to stay in the catechumenate as long as they need. Some of them need a little longer than others. Think about fruit when it's ripening. Fruit doesn't ripen at the exact same time. Some of them will stay hard a little longer, and some of them will be ready earlier, and you have to be ready to do that. And so we need to really start, again, changing the paradigm of we all need to move as a group through everything, or we don't want to leave them behind, or they all have to do the same rite because they feel left out. We need to start them off at the very beginning saying, we're all going to move along at our own pace of readiness. What does the order specifically say about this? I mean, it doesn't specifically say a year-long catechumenate, but what it does say in number 76 is the length of time appropriate for the catechumenate depends on both the grace of God and on various circumstances, namely the plan of instruction of the catechumenate itself, the number of catechists, deacons, and priests, the cooperation of individual catechumens, the facilities necessary for finding a place for the catechumenate occupying it, and the help of the local community. So nothing can be laid down a priori. And what a priori means is that we don't make assumptions before we've done assessment or analysis. In our case, discernment. So we don't just decide arbitrarily, we're going to start the pre-catechumenate on August 26th. We're going to have the rite of entrance on October 26th. And then everybody will go to the rite of election in February. We don't just decide that before we've even met the people that we're working with. Whether you do a different model or the year long, doesn't matter. We cannot lay down anything ahead of time before we've actually at least met them and know what their journey is going to be. Continuing, number 76 says the catechumenate or pastoral formation of the catechumens should last long enough for their conversion and faith to mature, even over several years, if need be. I'm going to hold it right there. A lot of people say, well, people won't come longer than a year. But if you're using a school year model, it's not even a year. It's 9 months. It's maybe a little of August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. That's 9 months. Maybe you have a little over 9 months. That's not even long enough that it's saying that the catechumenate should be. And yet that's what we're doing for the whole process. And so really we need to be working with our people to understand, I can't tell you what day you're going to receive your sacraments. I can't tell you that until we're at least partway through the catechumenate and I see where you are in your conversion and in your maturity of faith. And that we discern together. Some people will already say, yeah, but if we don't tell them how long it's going to take, they won't come. Or they'll just keep calling churches to find a church that'll do it for them faster. So I'm going to say this, and this is something that I've been working on with my supervisors and such diocesan, to be able to say that, we have to kind of get everybody in the same view. That even if you are doing a quote unquote school year model, that you're not going to just keep passing people forward just because their time comes. There still needs to be discernment. We cannot guarantee if you start in August, you'll be done by April or May. We can't do that. We have to really move toward, it's going to take as long as it takes. It just is. So moreover, by learning about the whole of Christian life over an appropriately extended apprenticeship, the catechumens are suitably initiated by the mysteries of salvation and the exercise of evangelical way of life and sacred rites that are to be celebrated in the subsequent periods, and are introduced to faith, liturgy, and charity proper to the people of God. So if we have enough time, all of this is what can happen. Instead of just relying on curriculum and themes. What are the themes we have to cover? Okay? Because when we look at our calendar, we realize we don't have enough time to do all of these things. Let's go on a little bit more. Number 77 says it's for the bishop to determine and supervise the formation of the catechumenate. So that's why I'm petitioning the bishop to help us with this. It is also appropriate that the conferences of bishops make more specific decisions in view of the conditions of people and regions. So that leads us to the national statutes. Now, if you haven't looked at your white book, the order of initiation of adults, of Christian initiation of adults, you need to look at the front in between the order, the introduction to Christian initiation, which mostly talks about baptism, and the introduction to the OCIA. In between, you will find the national statutes. The national statutes are were written by our bishops of the United States, saying what they specifically want to see in the United States happening. And norm number 4 says, ordinarily, a person who has entered the catechumenate is to remain in it from at least the Easter time of 1 year to the beginning of the Easter time of the next year. Preferably, it should begin before Lent in 1 year and extend until Easter of the following year, giving them a full year in the catechumenate. Now, you might say, but that's so long. Well, let's look at it this way. And I've done this in classes before. So if I've done this and you've seen it already, go ahead and take a quick nap. Let's talk it out. Let's say you decide to begin your pre-catechumenate at the end of August. And you've decided that you've decided that 8 weeks is enough of pre-catechumenate. Or let's say 6. 6 weeks is the pre-catechumenate. That's what you're going to do. So you have the last week of August. You have hopefully 4 weeks in September, but then again, you might skip Labor Day weekend if you meet on Mondays. And so when there's a holiday, there's always a chance you might skip a day, which is fine, because if you meet on Mondays, you're not going to meet on Labor Day. Holidays are for family. So, but let's just say for sake of argument, you're going to do 5 weeks. That's last week of August and the 4 weeks of September. And then you're going to do, we said 6 weeks, right? 1 week of October, and then let's do the second week of October. Now we have 7 weeks of the pre-catechumenate. And then you're going to have your rite of entrance into the catechumenate. And you've already decided this, okay? It doesn't matter if they're ready or not, or when they start the pre-catechumenate, you've decided. Then you're going to do the catechumenate, which will be 2 weeks of October, probably only 3 weeks of November because you got Thanksgiving. So that's 5 weeks in total. Then you have probably 2 weeks in December, because after the second week of December, usually you already have Our Lady of Guadalupe and Posadas and Advent missions and Advent reconciliation services and all this other stuff happening at the parish. So December, usually we give them maybe 2 weeks, and then we say, okay, people are going to start going out of town. So that's 7 weeks. Then they come back in January, and maybe you have 3 weeks, because of course nobody does anything the first week of January. So we're at 10 weeks. And this year, Ash Wednesday is, I believe, the third week of February. So that's 3 more weeks. So now you've only done 13 weeks of the catechumenate. Now, you can go through and look at the calendar that you've been planning for this year, or the one that you did last year, and count. Count how many actual catechetical sessions you're doing with them. If it's less than 5 months worth, which would be 20 weeks, then really, what are we doing? Then the catechumenate ends up being shorter than all the other 3 periods put together. The pre-catechumenate, purification, enlightenment, and mystagogia. So we really have to look at it as, when we have enough time, we're able to do so much more and help them understand the faith and understand how to live the faith and begin to practice the faith. A lot more than we can do in 13 weeks. So let's look at it again. So this is a traditional school year model. And I did this last year. So this is based on Ash Wednesday being in March. But this year, Ash Wednesday is in February. So that moves everything up about 3 weeks. So let's look at the traditional school year model. In the traditional school year model, you'll have inquiry or pre-catechumenate, maybe the end of August through October, through mid-October. Sometimes people go through to November, because it used to be the practice to have the rite of acceptance at the time, the first week of Advent. But a lot of time we don't do that. We make it a little shorter. So let's say we take it to the middle of October. Then you do the rite of entrance to the catechumenate. Then they go into the catechumenate itself, right? And that will take us, on this calendar, again, it says March, but in reality, that moves up a month, because I believe it's February 18th is Ash Wednesday this year. So that's a month less time that you have in the catechumenate than you did last year. So you have your catechumenate, and then of course we get to Lent, and we have the rite of election, and then purification and enlightenment, which is another 5 weeks or so. Then we have purification and enlightenment that leads us into Easter Vigil. Then we have mystagogy, hopefully, that takes us through to Pentecost. And then we kind of have ourselves a little vacation time until it's time to come back in August for the next group. And that's pretty much how we do it, right? We just start in August, we go to June, mid-June or so, whenever Pentecost is. We have a month off, and then in August, we start preparing for the next group. And we just take one group through at a time. So the question becomes, what happens if in October, and it's time for the rite of acceptance, you have someone who's come to you at the end of September and is just starting to explore, and they themselves say, whoa, I'm not ready to keep going. I'm still figuring this out. Or they're in the catechumenate and something happens in their life, a life-changing moment happens, that they're not ready on Ash Wednesday or for the rite of election. And they themselves say, I'm not ready. What do we do with them? Do we ask them to leave and come back next year? What do we do? And what do we do if somebody comes to us in April and says, hey, my cousin just went through Easter Vigil and I was here, and I realized I've never been baptized. I don't have any sacraments. And after seeing what they've gone through this year, I would love to be a part of this. Do we say, come back in August? Because that's what this model has us do. So instead, let's look at the year-round catechumenate. And again, this is just an example, okay? This is a way of looking at it to kind of put it in a more logistic sense so that you can see how it works or doesn't work. And so it doesn't mean this is exactly how everybody has to do it, but this is a model. So the first thing is we establish that we're going to have the catechumenate year-round. Unless there's nobody ready for the catechumenate, then we don't have sessions, of course. But as long as there are catechumens, we have sessions, and they go throughout the year. So let's say we take the model that is spoken of by the bishops, and we decide to do the pre-catechumenate before Lent. Now, again, I did this last year when Lent was in March, started in March. So this would need to move up a month, and we'd actually need to start it probably in November, start a pre-catechumenate in order to be ready for February 18th, I believe, which is when Ash Wednesday is, and then the rite of election follows that following Saturday. So you have a pre-catechumenate group that starts, to us, looks off season, but it's not. They start right before Lent, and then they do the rite of entrance into the catechumenate, and when they start the catechumenate. Now, when they are ready for the rite of acceptance, the rite of election, it's when Easter comes around the following year. So that first Lent, they're going through it as catechumens. That first Easter, they're going through it as catechumens. It's not until we circle back again to Lent that they then participate in the rite of election. Okay, so just know that. This is not right after, this is a full year later. So they spend a full year in that catechumenate. Then they go into purification enlightenment in Lent. Then they do Easter, mystagogy during the Easter season, and we end at Pentecost. Okay, so that would be how we would kind of start this off. But then you may have somebody, as I said, who comes to you in April or May and says, you know, I'm really interested. So you start to meet with them individually, or maybe you give them a book to read, or maybe you meet with them every other week. Nowhere in the book, by the way, does it say we have to meet with them every single week. You plan out a time to meet with them until you gather other inquirers. And then once you have a group of 3 or 4 of them, you start another pre-catechumenate session. And you work with all of them together. And when they are ready, you have a rite of entrance to the catechumenate. So maybe that's going to be in July. They're ready to jump in. And then they jump into the catechumenate that's already going on. Now, the first time I explained this, I had somebody ask, does that mean we have to go back and restart all the topics again so they can catch up? No, because if you have an ongoing catechumenate, you follow the Sunday Gospels. And each of those Sunday Gospels can bring about a doctrine that you can teach. And I'll show you some resources on how to do that at the end tonight, okay? But there are ways to do it so that you're not following a curriculum. You're not doing first Old Testament, then New Testament, then sacraments, then liturgy. You're not doing it like that. You're teaching them from the Gospels, but you're teaching doctrine based on what the Gospel reading shows. So they also go through a year of the catechumenate, and maybe you come back around and you get to the time that it takes to discern, and you discover a couple of them are actually ready because maybe they were baptized in a Christian faith, so they're actually candidates, and they know a lot of the faith, and they're ready to move forward. And maybe you have some uncatechized who are not ready, and they will continue their studies. Okay, but then you get back to Easter, see who's ready, and then go into another rite of election. Meanwhile, maybe in August, you have another group that comes forward. You have parents of children who've just registered their children for religious ed, and they've asked them at the registration, do you guys have your sacraments? If not, go talk to the people in charge of initiation for adults. And so now you end up with a little group of parents from the school or the religious ed who have coming forward saying, you know what, our children are preparing for sacraments. We want sacraments too. Well, then you start another pre-catechumenate group that'll go from August to November, let's just say. Okay, you plan it with them and you work with them. And again, when they're ready, you have another rite of entrance into the catechumenate. There are parishes that already do this, that have at least 2 or 3 rites of entrance throughout the year to be able to accommodate those who are coming in at different times. And then they go right into the catechumenate. Then when they're ready, whenever you're ready, maybe people are not ready for the rite of election in February, but they go 6 months and then we realize, ooh, they're ready already. And we realize this in July. Well, what are we going to do? Say, well, you got to wait till the next rite of election next year. No, if they're ready, if we truly feel that they are ready, that their faith is mature, all of the elements in paragraph 75 have been met, and they're just excited and on fire, then we do a rite of election with the permission of the bishop. We have a purification enlightenment season for them, even though it's not Lent. We do a similar reception of sacraments, and not Easter Vigil, but there is reception of sacraments that is kind of off Easter Vigil available in the book. And they do a mystagogy. And we have like a little Pentecost for them. Now, the thing about this is your July and August may not be vacation because you may have catechumens that are still in the process at that time. In that case, what some parishes do is during those months of July and August, because a lot of people are on vacation, out of town, they'll move to meeting every other week. And that way, that's not as heavy as, it would be meeting every single week. So some of them start by halfway through June, they move through every other week for June, July, and August. Nowhere in the book does it say you have to meet every week. Nowhere in the book does it say you have to have at least 30 sessions or whatever. It's by readiness. And so you judge how your group is doing, you discern with them, and then you figure out the best plan for them as you go along. Now that's a big headache. That looks like a lot, okay? And I agree. So let's look at the difference. School year model versus year round. When the school year model, you create your calendar at the beginning of August and you follow it through the year. With a year round model, you're using discernment, and as people are ready, they move forward and they don't have to move, with the group. If they're ready earlier, they can move earlier. If they need more time, they can stay for more time. In the school year model, there's no room for discernment. You barely have 14 to 16 weeks or so to do the catechumenate, and you're trying to cram so much information into them that you don't have time for true discussion and discernment. But with a year-round model, you can take the time out for prayer and discernment. You can do little retreats with them all throughout the year. You can do celebrations of the word and blessings and anointings throughout that year. You can do sessions that are connected to the community all through the year and still have time to teach the doctrine. In the school year model, you're not bringing new people in through the year. But in the year-round model, you're able to bring pre-catechumenate groups whenever you have 3 or 4 people that are ready to start. Then you start a new group and bring them in. In the school year model, you can't really do that. Now, the hard part is the school year model is easy to schedule. You could sit down in a couple of days and have your whole year done. And the year-round model needs more intentionality. It needs more of looking at the year, looking at where the holidays come, where the holy days come, where the parish has things happening. There's a lot of other elements to look at as you go through. With the school year model, a small team or even one person, though I don't recommend that, can do it all because you're just following the same group through. But with the year-round model, you're going to need more people. And I know right away people say, oh, well, I'll never be able to build a team. Well, this is how you get the community involved then. Because guess what? If you have a year-round model where you have different sessions going on at different times of the year, rather than, having one team go through the whole process with everybody, you can say to somebody, hey, can you just come and help me when I need pre-catechumenate sessions? That's all. That's your commitment. And if we don't have anybody in the pre-catechumenate, we don't have sessions. So it's not a full year. It's not an every week commitment. It's working with them at the times when we have them. You may do that for purification enlightenment as well, and for mystagogia. Ask people if they can do that. And so this way you begin to build your team without everybody needing to make a year, like I have to be here every week commitment. They're able to come in and out of the catechumenate just to get to know them, but they take care of their own section. And I'll give another plan on how to do that when we come back. A little bit later. So what's the difference? We have to fit catechetical topics into a calendar with the school year model. We have to look at how many weeks we have until Lent starts and then try to cram everything in. But with a year-round model, we're able to do true evangelization. We're still teaching, but we don't have to follow a specific curriculum. We look ahead at scripture and we say, oh, hey, we're going to be together for the baptism of the Lord. Let's teach our big baptism lesson on that week. Hey, we get to break open Holy Thursday with them. Let's break open what the washing of the feet really means and what Catechism of the Catholic Church quote, or what church document we can connect with that. And so you're able to really evangelize, not just teach topics. How do we do this? Okay, this seems like a lot. Well, first I'm going to say over and over, one step at a time. This is not the call to say you need to change your whole program tomorrow. Okay, one step at a time. So you need to first vision and dream with your pastor and your team to see, what do we want to do? Are we all on board? Because if your pastor and your team are not on board, this won't be possible. And just a warning from personal experience, there will be people on your team who say, if you're going to this year-round thing, I'm done. I'm out. And you have to be ready for that, because not everybody is ready for the paradigm shift. We're so used to seeing everything in a school year model. A lot of us aren't ready for change. So just be prepared and have people that are kind of your plan B, that you can say, hey, would you join us? And you would only be doing things as needed, but we'll teach you and train you in this whole process. So then you can build your team and start to plan. Okay. Now you're not going to plan for this year. Again, you're not going to say we're starting a year-round catechumenate right now. Okay, because obviously you don't even have a pre-catechumenate. But what you can do is you can plan out the year of the catechumenate and start just looking at different ways that you're going to approach the pre-catechumenate next year in order to be ready to start a year-round catechumenate. So just starting to look ahead at your pre-catechumenate, what do we do? How could this be a little bit better, not organized, but maintained? And what can we do to make it, make it flow, so that they're ready to flow into the rite and then into the catechumenate. And then you begin to look at your catechumenate. If you're still using curriculum for this year, because you already planned it, that's fine. But maybe start looking at the Gospels and see what might match up to some of your curriculum topics, and maybe adjust from there. You may not be able to do everything that way, but maybe you can do some of them, so that when they go to Mass on Sunday, there's a connection. Oh yeah, we talked about this, and now we're hearing it in the Gospel, and maybe Father's even using a little bit of it in his homily. And so they start to make connections. And that can start to get you ready for how you can do a liturgical catechesis if you're not already doing that. So we need to look at liturgical catechesis versus curriculum. Liturgical catechesis means, for example, this past weekend, oh my gosh, what was the gospel this past weekend? Was this Mary and Martha, or was that last week, Mary and Martha? Sorry, I'm getting all my Sundays mixed up. But let's just say that this past Sunday, let's just say it was the Good Samaritan. That was a couple of weeks ago. Let's just say it was the Good Samaritan. Well, then connecting that, your topic in the catechumenate could be so many things. You could talk about service. You could talk about who is my neighbor. And there is stuff in the catechism on who is my neighbor that you can bring in. You could talk about love. Simply just love one another, and bringing in the greatest commandment and bringing in the other commandments, and, la, 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 la. So there's many things that you could bring in to the liturgical catechesis mode that would sometimes be covered in curriculum, but now you get to match them up with the Gospels. And again, I'll give you some resources and show you some resources on how to do that specifically. You can organize your team by their gifts so that each one will participate in the stage they feel most comfortable. You know what? I'm not one, let's say they say to you, I'm not one for teaching. I don't want to stand up in front of people and teach. Well, how would you feel about having just conversations with the group as a whole, like the pre-catechumenate, asking them, who's God to you? Where did you learn about God? Who taught you about prayer? What are you looking for in this process? What do the sacraments mean to you that you're here getting ready to prepare? Or whatever questions you have ready. Would you be comfortable with that? And they may say yes, and they may say no. Okay, how about breaking open the word? Would you be comfortable meeting with the group, reviewing the gospel of that morning, and then just asking them, starting a discussion about that gospel? They may say, oh yeah, that I can do. Okay, then you can be one of our dismissal catechists. Or maybe you have somebody that really says, I really want to help. I really want to be a part of this, but I do not like to talk in front of people. Okay, how do you feel about talking to people one-on-one? Why don't you be our hospitality person? And you be at the door making sure there's coffee, and then you make sure that they get their name badges, and you greet each one by name. You make sure they're comfortable. Oh, you need water? Let me help you find water. Whatever they need. And you be that welcoming to them. So any gift that your team members have can be used in different ways. So ask them to what do you feel is your gift? How would you best serve the team? And let's put you in that role. Look ahead to the parish calendar and be inventive. Looking ahead and seeing, oh, the first Saturday in November, we're going to start collecting cans to make the baskets for the needy families in our parish for Thanksgiving. Why don't you guys sign up for one of those? Or let's all sign up for the same Saturday and we're all going to go help put them together. Or we're going to go help them deliver the baskets or whatever. Or we're going to be there as they come pick them up from the parish hall. Look in the calendar and see what's happening that they can be involved in or they can learn from. Because I'll tell you, you can teach social justice till you're blue in the face, but until they are actually feeding the hungry, that's when they have an experience of social justice. And so making those works of mercy come alive for them is a greater teacher than having a 2-hour long talk about what justice is. So look at the calendar, see what's happening, what's coming up, how can we tie them into that? Sorry, we're going to skip discussion. We'll talk about that in a second. So here are some resources I'd like to share with you. These are from LTP. So LTP has a digital institute that's coming up on implementing the year-round catechumenate. It's in November, excuse me. In a few minutes, I'll log on to their website and I'll show you where to find those dates. So they always have digital institutes going on throughout the year, mostly in English, sometimes in Spanish. There's also a book on your right side of your screen by Mary Birmingham. She wrote a book called The Year-Round Catechumenate, and that gives you a lot more specific ideas of how this can be done and what it means. These two are what I use when I work either in a catechetical session, because I do this in my parish, or a dismissal session. The one on your left, Catechetical Sessions for the Catechumenate, I love. And what that book does is, at the back of it in the appendix, you have the schedule of readings for A, B, and C. So you can say, okay, we're in year C, we're on the 19th Sunday of Ordinary Time, I'm making this up. You can look that up, it'll show you what the gospel is, and then it'll give you 3 or 4 examples of doctrine or topics that you can take from that gospel and use as the topic of your session. Not all of them, you take one. Then you go to the front of the Catechetical Sessions book, and there are several ready-made lesson plans for you to follow. Oh, this Sunday, it says we can talk about hope. Let me go back and look up hope in the front. Here's a lesson on hope. Let's see what that gives. And many times it'll just give you a starting point, and then you can go from there, okay? The nice thing about that book is that it includes the chart that has A, B, and C years, liturgical years, so you'd be able to see all of those. You don't have to buy more than one book, excuse me. And then you'll have lessons that can correspond with that. It doesn't give you everything, but it gives you a lot of lessons. And then the only, not negative, but the only caution is this book does cost $50. However, I think I have mine here. I'll show it to you when we're not. Yeah, I have mine here. I'll show it to you when we're not sharing the screen. It's a big book and it gives you a lot. And so it will last you. You'll be able to use it a lot during the year. The one on the right is actually it's a book that helps you break open the Sundays and solemnities. And that picture is of the 2025 version, which will end in November, at the beginning of November, or end of November, no, beginning of November, sorry, with Advent. And then the 2026 version is on sale already. And that will start with the first Sunday of Advent and then go through the rest of the year. So it is a great book. Mine is over there somewhere. It has 4 pages on each Sunday and solemnity that gives you a background of the scripture, how the scripture connects with the psalm, just a variety of different articles on those Sunday readings. And so those are great to use if you're doing a catechetical session and you're pulling out a topic. They're also very good to use as a guide for you, the catechist, not for them, for you, the catechist, to use for dismissal sessions, because it does have reflection questions to kind of get you started. So those are 2 really good resources that I use. The one on the left, Catechetical Session with the Catechumenate, is also LTP. So that's ltp.org. Living Liturgy comes from litpress.org. It's liturgical press. So their website is litpress.org. I think that's it. All right, let me not share. And let me stop recording.